Hi there, David Taylor on Mr. Pelargonium, back with another video for the Pelargonium and Geranium Society. Now today I thought I would do an update on all of the projects that we've been looking at, say over the last 2 to 3 months. I'm just going to go away for my holiday at the end of this week. And so let's get going and have a look at what we've been up to. Well, hello there, welcome back to the channel. Good to see you again. I thought it was about time that we did a little bit of a sort of summary update to bring you up to speed with what I've been up to over the last 2 to 3 months with regards to the cuttings that we took for the standards. A little bit of work maybe on one of the larger standards that I've got there. And just having a look around to see where we are in this sort of, well, we're getting into the middle part of September now. I'm filming this on Monday the 11th of September. We've had some very strange weather going on in the UK because it's been record-breaking weather again. We always seem to say that these days, but after a very cool July and August, we've had a very record-breakingly warm September so far. A good number of days, I think it's 7 consecutive days with a temperature over 30 centigrade, which I think is certainly a record for September. It's even pretty good for our normal summers, to be quite honest, but it's been excruciatingly warm, despite now the very shortening days. I mean, it's the equinox next week, so that's when 12 hours day, 12 hours night, and then after that, the nighttime period becomes longer than the day. So, you know, the days are really beginning to shorten, but despite that, we've had some very hot weather in this first week or so of September. Now, it has made the plants sort of really go mad, and I'm wanting them to calm down a bit, to be quite honest. It's just been too much in many ways. I have actually started to cut back a fair number of plants, primarily because I'm, in a way, starting to think about planning to get everything back in the glass house ready for the winter. But it's been a bit of a challenge because a lot of my plants are still growing very well. I have posted 1 or 2 images of my plants on my social media networks for Mr. Pelargonium, so just look those up to have a look at 1 or 2 of the plants that I've been putting up on those. Now, one thing you'll probably immediately see is that I bought the really big standard. It's still an unnamed plant. I must get Steve Pollard to name this actually. So if you're watching, Steve, I need a name for this one. Couple of dying leaves, but I have repotted this. This was a really big plant and it needed a repot. And the real benefit of this plant was the fact that it hadn't been repotted in over 2 years and there wasn't a spot of root mealybug on it at all in the pot, which was brilliant to see. So I just gave it a bit of a clean up and put it in a 14-inch clay pot now, so it's really going to grow on. Now, I think if you look at my own channel, you'll see me cut this back I think it was around about early August or late July, around that way somewhere. And it's actually begun to grow back. So that now is going to need another cut back, but I will probably wait until I come back from my holiday before I do that. It's growing away fairly well, growing away almost too much in many ways because, as I've said, it's been very warm. Now, one thing that has happened, you may remember that we did all these cuttings intended for standards. The Regals have now started potting up. This was the John's Delight. This was one of them that we did, that I showed you, and that's been potted. They were in, have I got an example of one? Probably have somewhere. They were in 2-inch pots, so that sort of size. So because I'm wanting these to grow on a bit faster, I've actually put these up to a 4-inch pot, or 4 1/4, I think this one in particular, 4 or 4 1/4 inch pot, which you can do. I want them to grow relatively quick. And Regals do put on quite a bit of growth, of course, in the autumn and winter. So that's something to consider. But I'm wanting these to romp away now. And of course, they're going to really not feel like flowering too much now at all. And they'll be putting all their effort into growing now. Certainly from this point, from the mid-September point onwards. But the butterfly Brian Wests, which I will grab one down. Now these rooted relatively quickly within 2 to 3 weeks, but these have been potted up now. There's another example of one that's gone up to a 4¼ inch pot. But you can see we've got good length there. Now the one thing that we do want to do with this one is just nip that flower out. We don't want any effort going into flowering, so that's something to consider when you're sort of growing plants on, that you really want to move fast, say at this time of year. Now, these will slow up, of course, for the winter. They're not like the Regals. They don't put a lot of growth on. So I'm wanting these to, put on a bit of height before they really slow up for the winter. And they probably will do that over the next month or so. As I say, I'm filming this today, the 11th of September. Over the next month, before it really starts to cool down at the back end of October, they should put on a little bit of height. All ready to grow on for next year. But of course, with the zonal sort of stellar side, it's not so much a problem with getting length from them, because of course, unlike Regals, these grow and flower on the same stem, so it's easy to get length even during the main growing period. Where in that spring and early summer period with Regals, all they want to do is throw flower growth. Now another one that we did, of course, with a Phyllis, and here are the Phyllis. These have been potted out. These are in a 4-inch pot. These have done okay as well. And a little bit like the Regals, these do put on a little bit of growth during the winters. And talking of the standards, here's a slightly taller one. Right, now this petals has grown on. Now the thing you've got to do, obviously, if your standards grow on, you just need to sort of tie them in. So that one's just lolloping over a little bit. Just tie it back, a little bit of string round in there. I mean, it's a 2-second job. And don't forget your side shoots. If you're wanting to encourage your plants to grow up tall, you just need to take the side shoots out. So don't forget to do that. I mean, it's a 2-second process. So I could do one. Let me just do one. Clean the knife. We've got a side shoot there that I want to take out. It literally is, I've probably shown this dozens of times before. There it is, side shoot out, bloom out. You don't want bloom, as I showed you on the other one there. And it's just a question of pulling that up and tying it in. But they're growing away all very well and very swiftly at the moment. Right, so what we'll do now, I'll show you the seedlings now, which have a lot have been potted on. We'll have a look at 1 or 2 of my larger standards as well. Right, now over the back here, you will see I don't know, I just found a space for all of the seedlings that I've potted up. Now, a lot of these were the Doris Shore seedlings, which I told you about. They all germinated relatively quickly and have been potted into little sort of dump 3.5-inch pots. They're all growing away very quickly, actually. I've been quite pleased with how they've grown, to be honest. I think they've done quite well. Now, you remember our Orset, or sort of lack of Orset growth that we had? I had 2 seedlings. I gave them 5 or 6 weeks to germinate, and I only had 2 of the 4 germinate. Right, so there we are. There's one of the Orset seedlings here. I clearly see a sort of what you'd call a more sort of scented, unique type secondary leaf coming through there. My only minor concern is that is relatively slow growing. I've got some zonal cuttings there as well. But here's the other Orset seedling. I'm just seeing if it's got a slight scent yet. Yeah, it's got the hint of the sort of Orset, the unique type strain coming through there. So I got two, as I say, one's slightly weaker. They germinated at more or less the same time, but that one's clearly much stronger growing. But this one is growing. It's going away well, but it's just a bit slower for some reason anyway. Doesn't really matter. It's obviously got a different growing technique, so it's not too much of a concern. But we'll have to see how they develop. Obviously, I'm not going to see any bloom on them until next year. Yeah, so that was a cross between Orset and a regal called Lalo, which is quite a nice vibrantly coloured bloom. Now while I'm over this way, I will show you this angel. This is my Berry Zest Angel Standard. Just get out the main sunlight as it's behind me. I actually give this a cut back last week because it was getting quite big again. It's grown on really quite fast and it's already breaking away from the cuts that I did around about a week ago. It's remarkably fast growing at this time of year, despite in fact the heat that we've had as well. So that's doing okay, and I will probably trim it back further. I mean, it's almost a two-stage trim. I've given it a trim to sort of just cut it back a bit, give it a little bit of stability. So what this first trim will do will enable a load of nice breaks to come further down, and I will trim this back a bit harder again in October, in about middle of October, about this time next month, before the real winter kicks in, because getting angels through the winter can be a little bit of a task because of these little thin stems. They can attract the botrytis, which is always the problem that we have here in the UK in our damp autumns that we generally get. So that's something that I will be doing in around about a month's time. Now here's a tall standard here, which I'm going to talk about in a moment, so I'll pull that one out. Now, a lot of the plants that we've cut back, and here's two of my Cosbrook Susannas, they are throwing a lot of bloom, but what I will do, again, another job for the sort of October period, will be the leaf stripping, which I have spoken about many times before. It's just going to be stripping the leaves down just to open up the stems so that air can move around them, and again to try and attempt to keep the botrytis off them. But at the moment, because of all the warm weather we've been having in the last couple of weeks, I've just let them just flower away, but they've grown quite strongly really since the post-show cutback. I've got quite a few others here. This is Shrivenham Crown and Shrivenham Star over the back there. And even one or two regals. That's Lilac Elaine there that's grown back from the midsummer cut. Right, now everybody knows that I'm pretty successfully growing a plant called a Denjo or Denzo. It's a Swedish variety. Excuse my pronunciation of that. Tinto Mara, and this is another one of them. This is a normal standard. I've got a multi-stem standard which has grown like a weed for me this year. It really has grown well. But I've got this other one which I'm growing as a more conventional standard. Now, the thing that happens with younger standards, and I'm showing this as a sort of carry on from the standards video that I did about a month ago, is that we get the split, which has happened, but this split now needs to be controlled, because primarily what's happening is we want to encourage side shoots to go out and fill these gaps. So the initial V that we obviously established here with the initial cut, you'll get two side shoots generally grow out. They need controlling back now in order to push out side shoots to begin the process of making a ball. So that's what I will perhaps just show you here. Right, so we got this good example. I've obviously put this right next to a plant that needs a good deadheading. This is another much older standard. Now in here, you can see we've got all sorts of little shoots going on. There's a bloom stem that I've just broken off. Now we've got a good number of side shoots breaking through, and we've just got to make a decision about where we're going to stop down these main stems to. Now in here, this one's marginally easier because we got this great long stem here, and we got a double break coming out of this main stem, one lower, that's the front one there, and another one a bit further back in there. And I'm hopeful that you can probably see that. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to cut that right down to that just slightly higher break that's coming out this way. So that's beginning to balance it out and push this stem out. So I'm just going to clean my knife. You obviously should do it every cutting. And I'm just going to take this one off. Take this side shoot out. I'm not sure you'll be able to see it, but I'm literally just taking it above this stem that's growing out to the, basically pointing out towards me. So I'm just taking that down, and there we are. Now you could get a cutting out of that quite easily, but I've got plenty of them. In fact, they're just up that way. So there we are, that's that one done. What I'm going to have to do here, I think, I can see side shoots coming in this. There's a side shoot beginning to break right down in there. And so what I'm going to do, it may be a two-phase process, a little bit like the angel that I just explained earlier. So what I'm going to do there, I'm going to knock that one out. I'm going to take that leaf off so that I can see what I'm doing, and I've got another identical one just straight underneath. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to stop that one down there, get rid of those, and now what that's done, if I turn that around, hopefully you can see that a bit more. I've cut those two back primarily to try and inject some growth into pushing out side shoots further down. We've got one growing up there, which is really good. That's fine. Leave that for now. But it's going to be a bit of a two-stage process, I think, because I want a side shoot to come out of there. And again, probably similar on this lower stem as well. I've got plenty of time to grow this, so there's no hurry in trying to get it into a perfect shape. It might take a number of years. So, but I mean, I suppose you could argue that it's already looking a bit rounder anyway, because I've taken the two long widths out. Now, another plant that we've obviously looked at is this petals. You may remember this large fan of petals, which I was wanting to fill the middle parts. Now, we've been constantly cutting down the top part, but I wanted to fill in this middle part, which was pretty bare, and it has sort of succeeded. Right, there we go. Now we've got all these lovely long stems that are growing up and filling this middle part. I do need to get down and tie these in realistically, but it's not going to be too big a job. Some of the deadish leaves there, probably needs a water. But that's done the trick actually. I'm really happy with the way, you can see there's another one there that's grown up. And these have done really well. I'm really pleased with the way that this has grown up, filling in these gaps. And this one in particular, this stem, which I'm going to tie back, is going to really help to fill this middle part. I mean, the top is now so dense. I mean, we've had a full season on it. It really does look stunning. I have been keeping the blooms down on it marginally, but it really is looking good. We potted it up, of course. It's in a big pot now, a big 12-inch clay pot. So I'm hopeful that that's going to look pretty decent by next season. Right, now one of the other few things that I did was in the early season was plant up this hanging basket. And this has actually done quite well, really. It's starting to get a little bit tired. I mean, it is late in the season, really, but it's come through very well. There were white ivies. Basically, I did it in a quad format, so two red ivies going that way, just commercial varieties, and white ones going on the horizontal as we're looking at it. And within that, I had a Gosbrook Susanna, must confess, minorly disappointed with the Gosbrook Susanna. I thought that would have got a bit bigger. I had another one of my own stellar hybrids in the middle there, but I think it did quite well. As I said, it's just beginning to get a little bit tired now. I've constantly deadheaded it right the way through. An interesting little phenomenon here was that that looks like it's actually a petal, or a pip rather, that's just fallen down from another bloom onto the white one there. But interestingly, that is actually in there and it is actually part of that bloom. So it's just sort of gone to another colour there, which is interesting. But yeah, I think it doesn't look too bad, and I think that's not a bad basket. The basket come on very, very well, really, and I was really quite pleased with the way they go. They usually do pretty well. The key thing early in the season is to, you know, let them search for the moisture. Don't overwater them. Let those ivies grow through, and even the zonals in there. Let them grow through without spoiling them with water. Otherwise, you run the risk of them really becoming a little bit of overwatered and waterlogged in that sort of big basket, because that's a 16-inch basket. So early in the season they were kept really quite dry, and that's the key to letting them to grow successfully for the upcoming summer, because I did plant this out right at the end of April, and it was relatively cool, so I really didn't spoil the basket at all, but it's grown on fairly well, and I think it still looks pretty good now in this sort of, well, getting on for mid-September period. Right, but that's just about it from me today. Hopefully I've been able to sort of bring you up to date with where we are with some of the projects that we've been working on really this summer. Now, as I said, I'm off on my holidays now in this sort of for the middle part of September, return towards the back end of September. I must confess, by the end of a Pelargonium season, I really do need a break, so it's really good that my daughter will be looking after things while I'm away. She always does a brilliant job, and I always do need to mention her because she likes a mention. Robin, if you're looking, thanks very much for what you'll be doing while I'm away. Without her, yeah, the plants would not be too well, so I really do rely on her to look after the plants. But once we get into October, it will be time for cutting plants back, beginning to reorganise the glass house to move everything back in. I really do not know where I'm going to put everything, to be quite honest, but that's a whole nother story. Right, so I'll see you again next month. Hopefully the weather would have cooled down a little bit by then. So look after your plants, and it's goodbye from me. Bye-bye for now.